Welcome to Why I Left, a podcast that explores the Great Resignation. I'm your host, Brian Akar. Join me as I chronicle real stories from real people about the reasons they decided to leave their jobs during the pandemic and what has happened since. Hello, and thanks for tuning into this episode of the Why I Left podcast. In today's episode, I chat with Bev Attfield. Bev believes people are happiest at work when they are supported and surrounded by kindness, feel encouraged to explore, create, and belong. She's on a mission to evolve leader thinking and organizational structures to produce incredible experiences and supportive environments for humans in the workplace. I'm excited to have her join the show, and I really enjoyed our discussion, so let's go check out her story. All right, welcome back. So our guest today is Bev Attfield. Bev is a partner at Within People, co-author, Globe Runner, and former host of the People at Work podcast with over 100 episodes under her belt. She joins us to share her journey prior to and during the pandemic, and ultimately why she left the software development industry. We're also going to hear about her epic multi-year backpacking and running journey through 30 countries. So I'm very excited about that. So hi, Bev. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining.
Hey, Brian. It's awesome to be here. Thank you for inviting me to chat.
Of course. And so we're gonna get into all those other things that I mentioned because I'm almost like more excited to talk about that than what we're actually here to talk about. But I want to, before we get into those things, I would love to just hear a little bit about, your upbringing and where you call home.
Great. Yeah. Well, and the good news is all those things that you mentioned are actually related. So we will get to them because they're all part of the same story.
Very nice.
So my background is I grew up in South Africa. I moved to Canada 25 years ago and have called the Vancouver region home for that time. I recently moved temporarily to San Diego in Southern California, where I am now playing in the California sunshine and experiencing a different vibe. And for now, this is where I'm calling home.
Very nice. And when I hear about San Diego, I've never been, but apparently it's the best weather in the nation all year round.
Well, so far, so good. I must say I'm really quite astounded by the consistency of the weather and how incredible it is every day when I open the blinds or the drapes and I have a look outside. It's sunny and beautifully temperate. Apparently the locals say this is quite warm at the moment. It is, late August. So it is quite warm as it is in most parts of the Northern Hemisphere right now. Mm-hmm. But I'm loving it.
No, that's great to hear. And so, talking about now career-wise, right? So what have been some of the things that you've been passionate about professionally?
Yeah, so from my sort of earlier times of trying to decide what it is that I wanted to do with my life, and I'm still not 100% sure that I have figured that out. But, I always had this curiosity around why people come together to do things and, like work output or sports or creative endeavors. And as I was starting in my career, I had the opportunity to work in different places, in, different kinds of environments, and started to really be even more curious about how organizations in particular are assembled and what you do within those organizations to either help people grow and thrive or to completely deflate them and remove the spark that they have in their day to day. And so as I matured and grew and learned and had the opportunity to go back and do an MBA where I was very interested in understanding organizational development and organizational psychology, which came on the heels of my undergrad, which is in communications and psychology. So I really wanted to understand how I could have an impact in changing the shape and form of organizations. And I quickly started to realize that you do that by starting with yourself as a leader and then inspiring and educating and bringing other leaders along the path with you so that you change organizations one by one person as you go.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, I love the focus on, OD and IO psych and all those things. It's an area that I too sometimes kind of nerd out in because it is so fascinating, just to hear and be a part of those things. So now, and I mentioned it earlier around, kind of your kind of partnership within people. But prior to joining that company, tell us a little bit about your work journey and what's worked well in the environments that you've been a part of.
Yeah, so I've mostly spent my career in the professional services realm. So I was in the hospitality industry, the tourism industry, the architecture, engineering, design industry, and then tech most recently with the company that I was with when I returned from my epic backpacking trip that you mentioned. And I think what I observed throughout all of those experiences was that the places where people can be themselves and where the emphasis is on a growth mindset and bringing people together, not knowing the answers, welcoming people to be themselves and share their ideas. That's where the magic actually is. And it's not just the tech environment where that kind of opportunity arrives or thrives. You can achieve that in any kind of organization with the right mindset, I believe.
No, that's great. And I love that. I've been hearing a lot and reading a lot about people really focusing more on that growth mindset, if you will. And so I think that is something that people should definitely take advantage of. So now, given the nature of the show, right, what I want to do is take you back. Let's go back in time. Okay. So this is a show about, the Great Resignation and the pandemic and all of that. And so it wouldn't be that without at least talking about what happened in March of 2020. So let's go back to that time. COVID hits us. We're introduced to this pandemic, right? And so talk a little bit about how the pandemic affected you.
Yeah, so at the time, I was working for a tech company here in Vancouver called Jostle, and the product that that company was building was an employee success platform, or also commonly known as an intranet or some sort of way to keep people connected. And my role there was really around not only helping our clients to improve the way that they connect their people and build their cultures by using technology, but I also had a part of my role was in building Jostle's own culture, as well as furthering the body of knowledge around like what are the things that are actually driving culture and leadership and creating engaging workplaces and amazing employee experiences. So I had quite a diverse role while I was there. And for me personally, when the shift happened, when we went basically overnight at Jostle to being a remote company, we basically closed our laptops on a Friday and were all at home on the following Monday, working from home. There was 70 of us. And fortunately, we used our own product quite extensively. So the shift for us to connect with each other using technology was the lift was quite light, like it wasn't difficult for us. But what was difficult for us was suddenly losing that physical connection to each other and some of the things that we took for granted around the water cooler chat or just the serendipity of crossing paths with someone and learning something about them or having someone help you about something. So, I think for me, aside from the anxiety and the fear and the unsettledness that was swirling around all of us at that time in late March 2020, I think immediately for us as the leadership team and for me as a key leader at Jostle was to move into this mode of trying to find ways to help our people feel looked after and cared for, but also keeping the culture alive when we could no longer see each other. So it was a huge learning curve for us. And I remember feeling like I was constantly battling my own personal feelings about what had just happened and the fact that I was now working out of my living room and nobody knew what was going to happen. And the news headlines were every morning, you didn't know what you were going to wake up to with the world news. Balancing that out against trying to keep our people together and safe and cared for and keep servicing our clients. So it was a lot.
Yeah.
But I was not alone. That was the great thing was I was definitely not alone.
Not at all. No, and you talked a little about some of the learning. So what did you learn during that time?
I quickly learned that I needed to let go of perfection and that it was going to be welcome for each of us to just be who we were in our home settings with all the life stuff that was happening in the background, that there was not going to be such a thing as a perfect video call, that there were going to be interruptions, and that there was a lot of latent stress going on, and that setting boundaries was really important at that time and still is, quite honestly, even though the tape has run forward now and many of us who went remote overnight have settled into being remote in some shape or form. The need for boundaries was really, really key in those early days. Just feeling like you didn't know when it was work, when it was life, when it was night, when it was day, had you eaten, had you not. It just seemed like a real mush of everything happening at once. And getting to those boundaries was a really good learning for me.
Yeah. And, that's actually a great point. I'm glad you raised it. What's like one boundary that you set during that time that you've continued to this day?
I think it was having a proxy for my commute. So I would normally have commuted into the office 25 minutes on the bus and 25 minutes home. So what I did in the mornings was I took that 25 minutes and I would take my dogs for a walk around the block, or I would make sure that I took 15 minutes to meditate or to have my coffee and listen to a podcast and just actually bookend my day as if I was commuting. And that really gave me like a marker to say, okay, the day is now starting and the day is now ending, because I just felt like there was so much blur in the beginning times that it was exhausting. And I felt tired all the time, not only from being on camera all the time, because all of my meetings were video calls, as it was for most people, but just the stress in the background of not knowing and not having control over what was going to happen next. I decided to control what I could within my workday, which really helped me feel like I had a partition to my work and the rest of my life.
No, that makes perfect sense. And now you were in Canada at the time, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So what was it like in Canada around that time? Look, we was in America at the time. I'm on the East Coast, and so the restrictions and the shutdowns and lockdowns were really strict here in New York. Different states did different things, but crossing the border, going up to where you were, what was it like up there?
Yeah, so I was in British Columbia and in Vancouver at the beginning of the pandemic, and my husband and I were living quite close to the downtown core. I mean, the first months were certainly, we didn't have a formal lockdown, but there were definitely restrictions on what you could do. So all of the facilities like gyms and community centers were closed. So there was nothing that you could do in an inside space. So I spent, a lot of my time, I'm a runner, so I would run. That would be my way of getting out there. And just, I really remember feeling quite nervous about being around other people. And we were living in an apartment block at the time and just feeling quite cocooned away, like not wanting to be in a public space and being in an apartment building in particular where there are 200 people living in that set of units, and just feeling quite exposed. And we were quite fortunate that about 6 months into the pandemic, we owned a home on a small island off the coast of Vancouver. And we were able to return. We had rented our home out, and we decided to return back to our house because we felt like that would be the safest place. It was in nature. It was far less exposed to people. And we were fortunate enough that we were able to return to our house. And once we returned to our house, things actually got quite a lot better, I think, for us. Not only from a low exposure and low risk point of view of being infected, but this location of this home was on an island, very rural, lots of access to nature. Our home had more space, so my husband and I could now have our own sort of private areas to work, so we weren't on top of each other during our workday. So I would say that my mental well-being definitely improved quite a bit once we made that shift back to our house. But, as time went on, there were ups and downs as the different waves and the different variants arrived. I think British Columbia did an excellent job of containing things as best they could. I think that the opening up and the closing became quite fatiguing for people. Okay, so now you can go out, now you can't, now you must wear a mask, now you don't have to. So, I think I felt like I was in a really safe place most of the time. I think that there were some really severe restrictions, like the US-Canada border being shut. That was very severe, I think, and that was really hard for a lot of people who cross the border daily to work or have family across the border. I mean, I didn't have that situation, but that was probably one of the most enduring restrictions that we had, was just being, the borders were definitely controlled quite strictly. So, yeah, I think all being told, I feel like it was the best place to be. But yeah, I mean, I know that there were many, many places where it was far more difficult to navigate than my situation.
No, definitely. And now, how did, so now you're back at your place on the island, right? And so how did the pandemic start to affect your relationship with your job?
Yeah, so I think as time went on and the realization was arriving that the pandemic had changed in-office work forever, it started to see, I started to see a shift not only in the way that the company that I was with was prepared to welcome flexibility and to support work-life balance in different ways than we had before. Because we were not a fully remote company before. We had flexibility, but we were generally expected to be in the office 4 or 5 days a week. How you shaped your hours, that was up to you, but you had to be in the office. And as it became obvious that we could do our work just as well by not being with each other, and we only needed to assemble for special occasions or for creative sessions or for brainstorming or whatever the case may be, we definitely shifted our attitude around needing to be in the office. And I think that springboarded an opportunity for me to explore what I wanted for my work-life integration and how far I wanted to take the idea of freedom and my capacity to actually integrate my work fully with my life, not the other way around. And I started to feel like there was more opportunity and possibility to do that, since working fully remote was now an option. So even though I felt that the context that I was in and the company that I was with was definitely supporting remote or hybrid work in some capacity, I felt like I wanted to have greater control over how I defined the work day for myself. And it started to become interesting to me that I no longer needed a company to craft that for me. I could craft that for myself.
No, that's amazing. And now, so I noticed you're with your last company for almost 7 years. And then you decide, to move on in January of 2022. So ultimately, why did you leave your job during the pandemic?
Yeah, so I think this is where perhaps I'll weave in the running and the backpacking around the world piece. My husband and I took a sabbatical in 2013, and so we took 2 years, and we said, look, why wait until we retire, until we go and travel and explore and see the world, and we love running too. So let's couple it all into this running adventure, and we'll go and see some countries and run in some crazy places, and just why not now? We ran out of reasons why we shouldn't do it. And we've lived a bit of an unconventional life. We immigrated to Canada. We always felt like we were changing up the agenda. Like roughly every 7 years, we needed to do something different in order to challenge ourselves and keep things interesting and creative. And while we were on that trip, we realized that we didn't want to return to the 9-to-5 grind of the jobs that we had left behind. And we wanted to reframe what function work had other than just earning an income. What does work unlock for you, and how do you design it so that it can actually enable you to do the things that you want to do in your life? And so we very intentionally returned back to Vancouver after our 2 years away. And knew that the best industry for us to step into to explore more flexibility, the potential for a more nomadic way of being able to move to different places and work from there, be with other other folks in co-working spaces who are also living a fairly unconventional life. The best way to do that was to go into the tech industry. So my husband already had a background in tech, so he continued on to become a software engineer. So he stepped into the tech space quite easily. And I joined the company that I was with, Jostle, in the capacity of a marketing individual, and knew that I could use the skills and the knowledge that I had as a marketer and transfer that into working in that space for a tech company quite seamlessly, which is what I was able to do. And interestingly, Jostle, the company that I joined, I had actually purchased their product and implemented it into the company that I left before I went on my travels. So I knew Jostle, I knew the people there. I really loved what they were trying to do, what their purpose was. And it just so happened that when I came back from my travels, they had an opening for a director of marketing role. So I joined them, which was wonderful. I mean, it was just serendipity, right?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was a product that I already knew, people I already loved working with, and an opportunity to really step into tech. And also, it happened to be in the HR tech space, which coupled my love of the organizational development and the impact that I wanted to have around changing the experience that people have during their workday. So, it's all along, it's been about designing a life that is according to your making, right? And when I decided that I was going to leave Jostle, it was because I wanted to step into more firmly with both feet into the context of freedom. And by freedom, I mean the ability to set your own time, the ability to choose how you spend your time, and the ability to also have much greater impact than being with a single company. So that was really important for me. I knew that my next step that I wanted to take needed to be one that was going to be either in an agency setting or in some sort of consulting setting so that I could actually engage with and learn with and from many organizations and leaders, not working in service of one brand or one organization like I was at the tech company that I was with.
That's
so
amazing.
I had a few reasons why I wanted to make the shift.
Yeah, and it's all coming. I hear it like all coming together. The OD background, the people background, HR tech, all of that coming into one space. So that's great to hear. And so when you think about how this decision impacted you, what are the top 3 ways you would say that has happened?
Yeah, so when I was making my decision to move, it became very clear to me that I wanted to have as much autonomy within my next step, which I believe I've achieved. It was important to me that I was surrounded by inspiring leaders who work with me every day and challenge me and help me grow as a leader, but can also benefit from what I have to offer and that I'm seen and valued for who I am. And I believe I've achieved that. And then just the flexibility of being able to, craft my days and my weeks like I want to spend my time in ways that really enrich me. So, for example, if I wanted to go do a tennis lesson this afternoon, I want to be able to change my schedule or craft my schedule today so that I can go do a tennis lesson at 1:00 in the afternoon. I don't have to ask for anyone permission for it. Obviously, I need to be accountable for how I'm going to spend my time in the rest of the week and meet the needs of my clients in that time and the needs of my other partners. But I want that complete flexibility. So those are definitely 3 things that I believe that I've achieved already just in the 8 months that I've been at Within People.
No, that's awesome. And so tell us a little bit about what has happened since you left.
Yeah, so maybe I'll give you just a quick little brief around what Within People does, just to set the context.
Sure, yeah.
So Within People is a global partnership of business strategists and management consultants, and we really operate to help people grow the companies that they love, both by working on themselves as leaders, but by also finding purpose for the organization that they're with, and then helping them understand what behaviors and actions are needed in order to deliver on that purpose and to create an experience that is in alignment with achieving that purpose. So we work with all sorts of different clients around the world, and our way of operating is a self-managed structure. So we have no bosses, we have no timesheets. We all operate as independent entities, but we are all aligned with the philosophy around within people, and we're built on this context of freedom that I mentioned earlier. So in terms of what has happened, so when I joined Within People, I very quickly wondered why I hadn't done it sooner. Even though I really enjoyed and thrived during my time with Jostle, I realized that this was exactly what I was looking for and that I was needing. I feel like I suddenly had the ability to learn and really be challenged. And, I think that happens for any of us when we've been in a role for a certain amount of time. You start to crave like that area of stretch and being pushed a bit. And I feel like I've really had that in a very kind and gentle way with the partners around me, as well as just the exposure that I've had to different clients and the challenges that they are trying to tackle. I feel like I've really been able to, scratch my head and think about things and really test my own belief about something, whether it's about employee engagement or showing up as a human-centered leader. I've really been able to have the opportunity to check what I believe in. And I think that is a tremendous gift to be able to be constantly challenged like that. I think that's such a beautiful way to keep growing as a human.
No, definitely. And was there like a pivotal moment in joining the company that you recall?
Yeah, I think what I think was pivotal for me was I've known a couple of the partners who started Within People for many years, and we've worked together in different capacities. Within People actually helped Jostle with some of our purpose and value definition, as well as our external positioning and brand messaging over the years. And I think what was pivotal for me, and maybe it's not necessarily pivotal, but that moment when I had actually made the decision to join Within, and when I actually stepped in and was part of the partnership, that was a really pivotal moment for me, because I stepped into this, if I can explain it as a mindset from a mindset of scarcity. So not really knowing what my next step is or where I'm going to grow and what I'm going to learn, to a mindset of abundance, of around what don't I know yet and what am I going to learn today and how can I have a greater impact? So I feel like that was the pivotal moment for me. And that probably happened like 3 months into my time at Within, where it was just a real confident endorsement of being in the right space and feeling like this is where I need to be in this moment, I was very grateful to have that experience. And I still feel that even today.
No, that's great. And what are the types of clients that you find yourself working with?
Yeah, quite a mix, from small tech startups to multinational, very well-known brands, different problems at different companies. Some are team-based challenges that we're helping with. Some are full identity and, purpose framework explorations where the company needs to completely redefine who they are, or they never did it in the beginning and now suddenly they're 80 people and they don't have a purpose and they don't have values. But also we work one-on-one with leaders. We work with senior executive teams with coaching. We help with strategy with some of our clients. So how do you actually take, once you know why you're here, how do you build out a strategy for getting to what your vision is? But what I will say, that the common denominator for all of our clients is they already understand how important clear purpose and vibrant culture is, and human-centered leadership is to the growth of an organization and the health of their people. So we don't have to convince anybody that they need this. What they're needing is how to actually go about and articulate the culture, and then embed the culture and live the culture. So I think it's quite interesting that we attract and we generate relationships with people who really get it as well as we do. But what's most rewarding is helping step a client into unlocking that for themselves, because we don't necessarily have the answer for them. Every client's individual answer is already, it's inside them. They just don't know how to access it or unlock it for themselves. So
that's right. It's within.
It's within. It's within people.
Right. Definitely. No, that's good. And so, and I like that approach, because it's almost like you're not selling, right? Like they already know what they need. Now you're just kind of helping to shape and implement. Right.
Exactly.
So that's like a sweet spot to be in. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And it's very much focused on relationships and just humans coming together and working together in a collaborative, co-creative way that is very rewarding and that is very generative too. It really builds this creativity and this inventiveness into it, which is very authentic at its core.
Oh, definitely. So look, I've been teasing this for a long time now in the intro, and I've been waiting to ask you about it, right? So tell us about, one, how you got into running and about this whole epic, what was it, 20 months, right? 20 months, 30 country running extravaganza, as I'd like to call it, right? So tell us about this.
Yeah, so I'm not a naturally athletic person, or at least I wasn't at school. I always shied away from any kind of sport. I don't know why. But as I got into my later 30s, I guess, I started dabbling with running, and I started to see that I was actually quite competitive, and that I was most competitive with myself, actually. And running is the perfect sport if you're competitive with yourself, because you can really challenge yourself to grow and advance quite quickly if you put the work in. And my husband is the same. He also loves running. We started off just, doing like running around the block. Like that was tough. That was really tough to do. And, after I did that for a few months, I'm like, oh, maybe I could run a little farther, and maybe I should sign up for like a 5K race. Anyway, dabbled in that, fast forward the tape. And, within a few years, I was running half marathons. And then I decided, okay, that's not enough. I'm going to go up to the full marathon. And before I knew it, I was running 50K and ultra trail races. And as I mentioned earlier, my husband and I realized that, our next big adventure needs to be something really epic, as we were sort of coming into, 2012, 2013. And we were thinking about, well, what's the next thing that we could do? And I've always thought it to be quite odd that humans leave the best experience of their life potentially to the last few chapters of their life or the last decades of their life, where potentially you're not as interested in adventure, or you can't adventure because of some health ailment, or maybe just means you're a bit constrained in your finances in your later years. So we just said, well, why wouldn't we just go and do this running adventure now while we're healthy and strong? And yeah, so our idea was that we were just going to start in Central America, and we were going to try and cover off as many countries as we could with the budget that we had, which was roughly $60 a day for the two of us, which goes pretty far in some places like in Belize or India, but it doesn't go very far in France and Australia. So, we had to be really careful with where we spent our time. But one of the key objectives is that we wanted to run as many organized races as we could in as many countries as we could. And we also wanted to run in as many off the beaten track places as we could. So I think we achieved that. We went all the way through, Central and South America, a bit of time in Southern Africa, a bit of time in Europe, India, Australia, New Zealand, and a little bit of Asia. So still have a lot that is untapped and unscratched. So we've got some other plans in the works. But throughout all that time, we were staying in backpackers hostels. We literally had only our backpacks. I think I had a 28-liter pack, which isn't a very big pack. But our whole idea is that we were going to be as lean and as efficient as we could. And just whenever we saw something that looked cool, we would throw our packs down or store it somewhere safe, put on our running shoes and just go and run. And I mean, some of the best explorations you can do as a tourist or a traveler is by running, because you can cover so much more ground when you're running than you can on foot. So yeah, so that was really the premise. We ran, a crazy marathon in Guatemala. We ran the Athens Marathon, which was incredible, finishing in the beautiful stadium, the Olympic Stadium that's in Athens. We ran a marathon in Perth, in Australia. We ran in Patagonia in the southern tip of Chile and Argentina. So yeah, we had a real variety of experiences along the way.
That is amazing. Look, I'm a runner as well, not as well traveled as a runner as you, but I've done a marathon, and I admit it. I can admit it's addicting when you get into it, right? And to your point of like, there's no better way to explore like a new city or a new country than to go for a run. I wholeheartedly agree, right? Because you just on the move and you see some beautiful things. So I love hearing about that. And now I also see that, you're part of the podcast tribe, right? Which, as I'm learning throughout as I started this show, this tribe is very large, right? There's a lot of folks in this game. And so, as I mentioned earlier in the intro, you were part of a show, you had over 100 episodes under your belt, but now there's also a podcast with Within, right?
Correct.
So tell us a little bit about the show that Within hosts.
Yeah, so we have a podcast called Reimagining Work from Within, and it's a show that brings people and ideas to the forefront around what's going on, particularly around culture and leadership, and how to find and grow purpose within organizations. So we have conversations with folks who may be a specialist in an area, like we just had an episode with LaTonya Wilkins on psychological safety and DEI. But we also bring our clients on to have a chat with us about what they've gone through by defining their purpose more carefully and what that's unlocked for them. We also do some roundup episodes where we talk about what's going on in the world of work and about topics and issues that are trending right now, so that we can help inspire and prepare leaders to have those bold and courageous conversations themselves within their workplace. So it's a fairly new podcast, but we're off to a strong start. I am not the primary host, so once in a while I make an appearance to host an episode. But yeah, I certainly miss my days at People at Work. We had a lot of fun. We were publishing an episode a week at People at Work, so it was at pace.
Yes.
But so grateful. You were talking about the tribe, right? Like some of my closest connections that I now have came out of people that I met through the podcast, and who we struck a common chord with each other, and we are inspired by each other's presence and work that we're doing. So I'm really grateful for being part of that community, and just also wonderful to be on the other side of the mic once in a while like this with you, to be adding some thoughts and ideas and inspiration into the mix as well.
No, that's great. And a part of this show is really around advice for others as well, to always like to start the wrap up with, because look, a lot has been happening in this space. At the time we're recording this, there's so many trends that are going on right now. We got the Great Resignation, Great Regret, Recognition. Now we got quiet quitting that's coming up. That, at least at the time we're recording this, it's August of 2022. And so, when you think about the advice that you would give to our listeners who may have a similar experience to yours, but really don't know what to do next, what would you say to them?
I think, the first thing that comes to mind is you have to step out of your comfort zone to experience the magic. And it might be really awkward and uncomfortable, and you might feel very scared, as I did, to make a significant change in how you are integrating or designing your work life. But in my experience, I feel like the rewards outweigh the risks, and just to not to be afraid to try something different or try something new and just see what it's like on the other side.
I like that. Now, what more do you think employers could be doing to better support employees in the workplace?
Yeah, for that one, I think that there's something around, so there's this golden rule of treating others as you want to be treated. And I actually think you have to break the golden rule as a leader and as an employer. And I think you have to treat people the way that they want to be treated. So, really thinking about asking questions, hearing, listening very carefully, not making assumptions about what you think people want as we try and navigate through these very strange times as work is shifting. Maybe just pause and go, well, what do other people want and how do they want to be treated, not how you might want to be?
Absolutely. And I do trainings and that's actually one of my lines as well. That's called the platinum rule.
Oh, it's been upgraded. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm glad I know that now.
Yeah, that's the platinum rule. So when you said it, I was like, oh, perfect. Yeah. So that is, I've done some, on the side on occasion, I do emotional intelligence training. And that is, when we talk about that, treating people how they want to be treated, that is like that platinum rule, if you will. So I love that you mentioned that because it is right on point.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for teaching me that. I've learned something, not only one thing today.
Yeah, of course. And now that you're in this new role, in this next chapter in your career, what is the type of impact that you're hoping to have?
So if I can make just one person's day at work feel more liberating and inspiring and freeing, then I feel like I've had the impact that I want to have. However, that's not enough for me. I really want to have a hand in changing what work is and how people experience work and these structures and environments and ways that we make decisions as organizations together and how we treat people and welcome people and let them be themselves within workplaces, because I believe that spills out into society in a positive way. I feel like we all spend so much time at work that the time that we're there should be enriching and empowering. It should not be a place where we bring fear and judgment upon people. And so if I can, in some shape or form through my work at Within People, help build amazing cultures that unlock that for people, then I feel like I would have had an excellent legacy to leave behind in my work.
That is great. And I think you're at such a pivotal time in our work history right now that I think you can do just that. Right. And so that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And now my last official question is, what are the top 6 countries you think people should run?
So I'm going to say Patagonia, which is really 2 because it's Argentina and Chile. I'm going to say New Zealand, beautiful trails, incredible natural beauty. I'm going to say France, and in particular the Chamonix area. I'm going to, what's that, 4? I'm going to say Namibia, which has got incredible, beautiful and diverse natural beauty. And then let's go with Hong Kong. There's some really incredible, surprising, beautiful trails in and around the city of Hong Kong that are really, really spectacular. So hopefully that's awesome. a fair mix off the top of my head.
Oh, definitely. You got us a little bit everywhere. So that's perfect. That's perfect. Well, look, Bev, I want to just say thank you for taking some time to speak with me today. It's been a pleasure learning about you, your story, your journey. And I'd love for us to stay connected. I love the information that you post on LinkedIn. That's actually how we got connected.
Yeah.
So, love LinkedIn, right? They don't sponsor this at all, but I got to give them credit where credit is due.
Definitely.
And so would love for you to share, where can our listeners support you and find you?
Yeah. So predominantly my presence is on LinkedIn, and you can find me at /Bev Attfield, or just search for Bev Attfield. That's where I'm at. You can also follow Within People on Instagram, or you can check out our blog, which is withinpeople.com, or at Within People on Instagram. And just feel free to reach out. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I love a good conversation. I don't always need anyone or everyone to agree with me. I think it's great if we can have multiple sides to a conversation. But what I do love is a common interest in helping us make work better for people, and so that we can see our world be enriched through the function of work.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you again. So look, that'll do it for today. Again, I want to thank my guest, Bev Attfield, for joining us. I'll be sure to share her information in the show notes. So I hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Bev.
Thanks, Brian. It's been wonderful.
Thanks again for listening to Why I Left. Be sure to join us next time for more stories from the Great Resignation. Visit us at www.whyileft.co. That's whyileft.co. And subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.